Cool K here. Do I have the infamous, the one, the only famous sword swallowing Dan Meyer on the line with me?
You very well do. Good to be here.
Hi, Mr. Dan. So how long have you been swallowing those things anyway? I'm curious.
I started in 97. It took me, I practiced 10 to 12 times a day, every day for 4 years, about 14,000 unsuccessful attempts. So I got my first sword down in 2001. So it's been about 22 years that I've actually been swallowing swords, but about 25 years that I've been working on it.
Okay, I'm kind of curious. I mean, it's kind of an unusual occupation. Where did the idea come from? Did you meet somebody else who did it?
I'm gonna give you a little bit a short version of my TED Talk, and if any of your listeners want to watch my TED Talks, I've done about 9 of them around the world. But the first one was called "Cutting Through Fear." And the first 20 years of my life, I grew up in extreme fear. I couldn't talk very well. I would shake and stutter. I was a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid with low self-esteem, inferiority complex, fear of failure and rejection. I was just a scared, shy, skinny, wimpy kid, got teased and beat up by the bullies all the time. And when I was 20, I moved to India as a short-term Lutheran missionary for about a year and ended up almost dying of malaria fever the week before my 21st birthday. And the night before my 21st birthday with 105-degree fever, I prayed a little prayer and said, all right, God, if you let me live till my 21st birthday, I will not let fear rule my life any longer. I'm going to put my fears to death and take on risks and challenges. And that night, I made just a little bucket list of 10 things that I wanted to do with my life: visit all the continents, visit the 7 wonders of the world, live on a ship on the ocean, live on a deserted island, live with a tribe of Indians in the Amazon, work in the music business in Nashville, work with a circus, jump out of an airplane and see Mount Everest at sunrise. And I never thought I'd be able to do any of those. And I won't tell you if I survived to my 21st birthday or not. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But I did survive, ended up moving to a little island in the Bahamas for 7 years, checked off one, live on an island, ran that island for a cruise ship for 2 years as a scuba instructor, checked that off, moved to Mexico, moved to Ecuador, lived with the tribe of Indians in the Amazon rainforest in Pujo Pungo, checked one off there. And eventually I moved to Nashville, worked in the music business, started doing circus skills, circus clowning, juggling, fire eating, glass eating, human blockhead. And long story short, in 1997, I heard there were less than 12 sword swallowers left in the entire world. I met one in Nashville where I was living named George the Giant, and I said, give me some tips on sword swallowing. He said, I'll give you 2 tips. There's less than 12 left in the world. And number 2, it's extremely dangerous. Don't try it. And guess what I did? I added that to my list of thrones, my bucket list. Every time I'd check one off my list, I'd add 5 or 10 more onto my list. And in 1997, after I met George, I started practicing. And I set out to find each of those 12 sword swallowers and ended up finding a couple more. And in 2002, we had our first sword swallowers convention. And we had 18 sword swallowers show up from around the world. And from then on, it's just been an incredible ride. It's been just a blast.
Okay. I'm going to presume, after all of that you're not a married man.
I have been a few times. But life on the road, working fairs, I absolutely love working fairs and festivals. But sometimes it makes for a little bit of a tough strain on the family sometimes.
You got kids?
No kids.
Okay. You
Nope.
make me tired just to listen to you. Okay. All right. So what was your first sword swallowing event? Do you remember that you did publicly that you got paid for?
Oh, man. Yeah, I did. In 2002, I got invited I started performing with Brooks and Dunn. I toured with them 2002 and 2003. That was a pretty good gig, performing for 25,000 people.
Yeah.
But, the very first gig I did was in a church in Frog Jump, Tennessee. I kid you not, Frog Jump, Tennessee, for an Upward Unlimited thing. And I was performing, and they had this big screen 25-foot projection screen behind me, and the thing fell over on top of me. And I remember trying to hold that thing up, and people came up and put that thing back up, and I just kept doing my show. And I'll never forget that. That was the very first one. Fortunately, they've gotten a little bit better since then.
Hey, Dan, what you do is kind of dangerous, isn't it? I mean, did you ever get hurt?
Nah, it's not dangerous. It's deadly. I've almost died 4 times. I ended up puncturing my stomach in 2005. I was swallowing 5 swords at once, and they scissored. My stomach retched and punctured my stomach. Couldn't eat solid food for a month, and almost quit sword swallowing. But I had to do an episode for Food Network Unwrapped up in Tennessee, and so I got my swords back out and managed to make it through that episode, and just kept going, never looked back since then. I had another accident in 2010. I was swallowing swords underwater in Rome, Italy for Guinness World Record TV for a program called Lo Show de Record, and I had done it for Ripley's in 2007, swallowed swords underwater in a tank of 88 sharks and stingrays, and then Guinness flew me over to Rome to set the Guinness World Record for swallowing swords underwater. And so did that in 2010, but ended up puncturing my esophagus, ended up in the hospital there in Rome for about 2 or 3 weeks, and eventually had to break out of the hospital to fly home because I had another gig up in Copenhagen the next week. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun.
That other gig, was it a sword swallowing gig?
Yes, it was.
Have you ever had anybody tell you that you're crazy?
Oh, all the time. I had another accident about 4 years ago, maybe, here in Mesa, Arizona. Went into a sword shop, and they had these swords on the wall, and I'm looking at them, and I saw one that just looked perfect, and my mouth started to water. And the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, do you like swords?" I said, "Oh, I guess you could say so." And he said, what kind of swords do you have? And I said, "Oh, I've got about 350 of them at home." He said, 350? What do you do with 350 swords? And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I swallow them." And he looked at me and said, "Nah, that's fake. They can't really do that." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah? Watch this." I said, "If I can swallow that sword sharp, will you give it to me?" He said, "No, man, but I'll give you a deep discount on it. I'll give it to you for half price." And I took this beautiful saber and got it down to about my collarbone, and it stuck and wouldn't go any further. And I thought, I am not pushing it. This is a sharp sword. So I took it out, adjusted it, slipped it back in a second time, hit the same place. It poked again. It just stuck. And I said, "No," took it out, flipped the blade the other direction, slid it back down. It went to about the same place and punctured my esophagus for the 3rd time. And my throat started to burn. It started to swell up. I went home, ended up drinking several glasses of ice water while I could still swallow, and as much vitamins and Theraflu and NyQuil and everything I could to knock me out for about 10 or 12 hours, and hopefully let it heal up over the most of it. And after 3 days of pretty much just staying in bed, spitting up blood, I got back up and I healed up, and I went back and I bought that sucker, and I now use it as one of the final swords in my show.
So what did the guy in the shop say?
He became a good friend. He became a real good friend, and I bought several swords from him after that.
All right. Well, if you had kids, would you let your kids do this?
Probably not. No, most the world's youngest sword swallowers have started at the age of 12 and 13. But it's just way, way, way too dangerous for kids. Even in my shows, I stress, do not try this at home. I stress it over and over before every sword. And by the time I'm done, the kids come up to me after the shows and they're like, "Yes, sir, we are not going to swallow a sword." So it is extremely, we know of 29 sword swallowers have died over the past 150 years. I'm just finishing a book on it that will be going to press next year on the history of sword swallowing. And it is dangerous. And I'm the president of the Sword Swallowers Association International. We have between 3 to 5 injuries per year where somebody calls me and says, Dan, I'm in the hospital. I punctured my esophagus. I'm like, yep. And they're like, don't tell anybody, okay? So.
Hey, I saw that video you sent me on America's Got Talent where you pulled a car. You want to talk about that?
Sure. That was a fluke. I got a phone call on a Monday from one of my producers on America's Got Talent. I'd done America's Got Talent season 3 of, I think, 9 episodes. I went through from Nashville audition to the Atlanta regionals to the Las Vegas quarterfinals and semifinals. Got eliminated there and then was brought back to the finals in Hollywood in season 3. And of course, I didn't win the $1 million, but then 8 years later, in season 11 in 2016, I get a voice message from one of my producers. He said, "Hey Dan, do you want to be back on America's Got Talent? Call me." So I missed it that night. I called him the next day. He said, "You want to be back on?" I said, "Sure. Next year in Miami or Orlando?" He said, "No, tomorrow in Pasadena." I'm like, what? So I had a gig all during that day, and I got done with the gig at 5 o'clock, made it to the airport by 6, was on a plane by 7, got to L.A. by about 3 or 4 in the morning, and got about 2 hours of sleep and then had to be up on the set. And they're like, "We want you to pull a car like we saw you did for Ripley's Believe It or Not." And I'm like, "Well, what kind of car?" They said, "I don't know, we'll get you something." I'm like, oh, my gosh. So all day long, I waited, and they finally got me on the episode that you see on YouTube. It's season 3, episode 5 on America's Got Talent, 2008. It was about 12:30 at night. I hadn't had anything to eat. I'd only had about 2 hours of sleep in 2 days, and I hadn't seen the car that they had rented for me. And then they said, are you sure about this? And I said, no. And Heidi says, what, you don't? And I said, no, I haven't tried it before with this particular car. And fortunately, it went really well. Got standing ovations from the audience, from the judges, 4 yes votes. It was incredible. And now I've gone on and done that at about 14 other Got Talents around the world. And it has been a blast. Absolutely love impacting lives.
Okay, so is this the way you primarily make your money now, by swallowing swords?
That's all I do. I do fairs in the summer, festivals in the fall and winter, corporates here in Phoenix in the winter of the snowbird season, and several Got Talents. I just did my 15th Got Talent last week in Germany, and I love doing this for what I do in my show. Most people don't believe sword swallowing is really real. They think it's a fake, a trick. And so in the beginning, I would say, okay, watch very carefully, watch my fingers, watch my lips, watch my throat, see if you can figure out what the trick really is. And so everybody leans forward. They think it's going to be a magician's trick. And they're watching, and the first 2 swords I do are the fake swords, a curl-up sword, a telescopic sword that telescopes into the handle. And the audience goes, I knew it was fake. I knew it was fake. I say, well, the reason I do those is if I didn't show you the fake swords now, you wouldn't believe the real swords later, right? And then I start with a small 15-inch dagger, impale an orange with it, swallow it very slowly, eventually throw it into a board in the floor to prove it's real. And then I swallow hedge clippers, a giant straight razor, a serpentine sword that makes my Adam's apple wobble back and forth, a curved sword that I have to bend my body, eventually sometimes a car axle or a forceps, a giant saw, and all of them to prove that it cannot fold up in the handle. And eventually along the way, the audience gets this paradigm shift. Oh, wait, this is not fake. This is the real deal. And it really becomes pretty mind-blowing for them. And then I use some of my TED Talk ending at the end and turn it all around. It's not about me. It's not about the swords. It's about you finding your sword, finding your superpower, your force, but your purpose in calling, what you are put here on earth to do. And I turn it into a little bit of a TED Talk at the end, and people's minds just get kind of blown because it's not about the swords. It's not about me. It's about them finding, what is their superpower that they can do in their life. And people absolutely love it. So my whole show runs about 45 minutes. My goal is to try and get a standing ovation every show. And I'm not kidding. Almost every show, somebody will come up in tears and say, I was teased and bullied. I had dreams, aspirations, and you've inspired me to do the impossible in my life. I love giving back to people. I love watching their expressions, their reactions in the audience when they find out it's not fake, it's not a magic trick, it is really dangerous, and it makes it just for a really, really fun show. I do something different than most entertainers. Most entertainers stand on stage to get laughter, to get applause, to get affirmation from the audience. And I do just the opposite. I'm not there to get. I'm there to give. I give the audience a chance to laugh and squirm and think and learn and wonder in awe and amazement, and to believe that they can do the impossible in their lives. So I kind of turn it around. It's all about them. I do 5 things for fairs. When I go when a fair books me, I do 5 things. Number 1, I attract people to the fair. I offer to do radio and TV interviews or just phone interviews for the newspaper the week or 2 before the fair to draw publicity. And what that does is it raises curiosity. Everybody's curious because they know the celebrity. They've seen me on America's Got Talent twice, and Guinness and Ripley's, and a bunch of other shows, Huckabee Show and Today Show, and so people come out of curiosity for the celebrity, for the oddity, for the unusual, weird, like, is that really real? And I've had, I don't know how many times, over and over and over, people come to the fair and they say, the only reason we came to the fair was to see the SwordSwallower. My son wanted to see the SwordSwallower. You're the only reason we came to the fair. So if I can attract people to the fair, that's one thing. The second thing I do is I give them entertainment. I interact with the audience. I make them laugh. I make them, I do a lot of comedy, a lot of visual stuff at the beginning. So it's it's like a comedy show, a little bit of a stand-up comedy kind of bit with sword swallowing, and especially with the fake swords. So I attract, I interact with the audience, make them laugh, and then I create a reaction in the audience. And this is something that most other entertainers don't do. When I do my show, it creates cortisol, the fear reactor in people, when they're cringing, adrenaline, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and people come up to me after the show and they say, my hands are shaking, I'm breathing fast, my heart is beating, and you just did something to me. And I can create that reaction in the entire audience. I'm creating a chemical reaction in the audience. And you don't get that with balloon animals or juggling. I've done both. I love it, unicycle, the whole bit. But it doesn't make people breathe fast, and their hands get sweaty, and it's like, wow, what's going on with me? Well, I created a chemical reaction in you, and that brings people back again and again. It kind of creates a profound reaction in people, and that reaction makes them say, I got to go get my grandkids, got to get my neighbors, and bring them back again and again. There's one fair that I do, Eastern Idaho State Fair, and I've got several people in the audience who have seen every single show 36 times per year, over and over, every show. I've got a family of 10 up at the Alaska State Fair, and they come to every single show for 3 or 4 years. I got a lady who flies from Maine to go to the Alaska State Fair, and she comes to every show, and another married couple. And this happens fair after fair after fair. People come back again and again and again. They like that warm feeling, that some of the gems of wisdom that I like to impart at the end. They like having something to take home and bring their grandkids and their neighbors to see. So I attract, interact, kind of create a profound reaction in people, and then bring people back to your fair again and again. And I'd love to I've been doing this for, 20 some years now. Love doing state and county fairs and festivals in the fall and spring. So if anybody's interested, check me out on cuttingentertainment.com, Cutting Edge Inner, INNERTAINMENT.com.
Hey Dan,
And,
you've done a lot.
yes,
You've done a lot. You've done a lot of stuff in your life. Out of all the stuff that you've done, it sounds to me like you like the sword swallowing best. Is that right?
It's what I was made for. It's my purpose in calling. I absolutely love it. I love creating a reaction in people that they say, I will never forget this. That's what I like doing with people, is impacting people's lives.
Okay. All right. Is there any place specifically that you would like to perform that you have not had the opportunity?
Yes, I'm trying to get in with Utah State Fair, Nebraska State Fair, South Dakota, Montana. I think they've got two of them up there. Illinois State Fair and Missouri State Fair. Those are a couple of them that I'm really interested in getting in with. Of course, Minnesota and Wisconsin State Fairs would be wonderful. Would love to do those too. But
Okay.
absolutely love impacting people's lives and knowing that I have found my purpose and calling and a way to kind of change the world in my own strange, unique way.
Dan, have you ever had any really bad experiences during any of these shows? I mean, that goes with it, right?
It kind of does. I've had some really, really hot shows at Western Idaho State Fair. Some where it's just so hot, my swords get up to 120 degrees, 150,
Oh, geez.
and I have to put ice on them to cool them down. I've had one injury at Western Idaho Fair where I pulled a sword out and had some blood on it because I just had done like 30 some shows in a row, and my throat was swollen, and so that was fortunately my last show there, and it healed up no problem. But no, not really any bad experiences with audience members, no.
Okay. All right. Do you teach people?
I've had four people that I mentor. I've got one I'm mentoring now. One of my students was the guy who won, or almost won, America's Got Talent. Alex Magala swallows a sword, and then he climbs a pole and does the head-first pole dive. And he's one of my students, and he and I have worked together on several things. But yeah, I had one from India, one from Canada, one in Germany, and now I've got one right now that I'm working with. As a matter of fact, I just received a samurai sword in the mail just a few minutes ago, and I have a hunch it's from my student. So that was pretty neat.
Okay. You're not a young guy. You've been doing this for a lot of years. How old are you, can I ask?
I think I'm 21, or at least that's what I think I am.
Good luck.
I made it into my 60s, and I'm loving it. This year I did 7 countries, 6 Got Talents, and the Huckabee Show, and several fairs, and absolutely just had a blast. Incredible year. I was shooting to be in front of 10 million people this past year, and I just broke over 50 million people. I did the finals of Sweden's Got Talent, where I had the golden buzzer. Went to Sweden's Got Talent, Croatia's Got Talent, Spain's Got Talent, Canada's Got Talent, and Germany's Got Talent this year, and along with Huckabee Show and these other fairs. And absolutely had probably my best year ever. Love doing what I'm doing.
Do you have any relatives at all that are still alive?
Yep. My brother is a filmmaker in Germany, and my sister is trying to start an orphanage in Jamaica.
Okay.
I ran 5 orphanages in Kazakhstan for a few years, and so it kind of runs in the family to travel quite a bit.
Geez, you've been every place, haven't you?
No, but there's the last few I want to get to. I do want to get. I've been to 60 countries now around the world, and have enjoyed it. I've still got a few more. I'd like to hit 75 countries. Got a few left in Africa and South America to visit.
All right. Well, it sounds to me like you're looking for bookings. So how do people reach you?
So people can reach me at my website, cuttingedgeinnertainment.com, cuttingedgeentertainment.com, and click on events, and you can find fairs and festivals and Oktoberfest, and there are a lot of drop-down boxes there. And or on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, my handle is DanMeyer-Swords, Dan, DanMeyer-SWORDS on TikTok, Instagram, Truth, some of the others.
Okay. And, of course, now you're going to be on Countyfairgrounds.net.
That's right. Looking forward to it. Would love it. And if you heard about me on this podcast or from countyfairs.net, let me know. I'm real curious to see how many folks out there are listening and are looking for good entertainment, something that will really blow your audience's minds.
Okay. All right. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and I'll get this up, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Cool K. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye, Dan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.